if you're an end user who doesn't have a lot of IT knowledge, I think it can be very intimidating that suddenly there's something extra joining that meeting. And I really appreciated seeing the news the other day that, third-party agents are going to be identified as they are joining Teams meetings, and you're going to be able to say no thank you. Because I think that's certainly becoming an area now where people don't know what they're admitting into a meeting.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is a great insight into a really interesting Teams journey and Teams Rooms journey. We have Christopher at Novo Nordisk, and he talks about his journey from standards-based rooms into Teams Rooms on Windows, Teams Rooms on Android, and really is open about the experience of rolling out thousands of rooms at scale in a relatively short period of time. Many thanks to Christopher for jumping on the podcast, and also many thanks to Cisco, who are the sponsor of this podcast. Really appreciate all their support of the community. On with the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Some of my favourite shows are customer stories and real world experience. And this is going to be a good one with Christopher. We did a really good prep call where the ultimate conclusion was I think we've got like 3 podcasts worth of insights here. So no pressure, Christopher, but there was a lot of good conversation. Yeah. Maybe we could start by you could introduce yourself and your role. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks. And thank you for having me. My name's Christopher. I work as an IT architect for Novo Nordisk. We'll get into it along the way, I'm sure, but just kind of the basics of my work is setting global standards for all our unified communications, really, but specifically meeting rooms and a few other services here and there. And then Novo, from a for those that don't know, perspective, is a global pharmaceutical company, very much in the obesity and diabetes market. That's a very short intro.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, let's start off with your journey, because you haven't always been customer side. You've done consultancy side as well. Yeah.
So I graduated from the IT University in Copenhagen in, when was it, 2014? So I haven't been on the, in the professional market for that long. Still feel young, certainly. But
you actually, in that time frame, you've come in a big time of transition, actually, which is quite interesting. You didn't bring a lot of legacy philosophy to the last decade.
I really didn't. And I mean, when I used to be at where I started was at a Danish telco, TDC, and all my colleagues were always talking about, how they were actually in server rooms connecting cables. And to me, that just sounded completely crazy, right? I'd only ever heard of cloud computing, basically. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but that was kind of how it felt. So kind of my introduction into that unified communications world was very much in enterprise telephony, which to this day, depending on what type of company it is still very much on premise. It's your own hardware. It's secured in the basement somewhere. Yes, you've got your gateways out, but it is still very, managed by boxes kind of thing, where, the strategy that we have here in Novo Nordisk, which I joined, roughly 5 years ago, is completely cloud first. Certainly in this space of our, what should we say, the administrative employees kind of portfolio of services and tools that they use, very much in that cloud space.
Awesome. And so 5 years, so you joined right around COVID time and the massive change there. And obviously pharmaceuticals, so I'm guessing, I know you're a big Cisco shop, so presumably on-prem Cisco. Was Teams and Skype in the mix at that point? Where were you then?
Yeah, there was some Skype. Skype was the UC client. There were some experiments with WebEx as well, which can't have been WebEx then. It must have been Spark. It was Spark at that point.
Pre-Jabber.
Kind of in the Jabber kind of era as well. Yeah. But Skype for Business was the preferred UC client, and then the transfer to Teams happened just before kind of Denmark went into a COVID lockdown, which was fortunate, but it also, changed the landscape of how people were using their communication tools on their PC, because, suddenly you couldn't opt out. You were automatically opted in. And then when people did start coming back to the office, there was a certain, lack of understanding of where are all these smart tools that I've got in my Teams client? Why are they not in the meeting rooms as well?
Yeah, you're one of those, we hear this story quite a lot, interesting example where obviously COVID was a terrible impact for everybody, but the adoption thing of forcing adoption changed how people work. And then they come back to the office and they're like, oh, we're used to meetings with side chats and reactions, and we record them and we do this and we do this. And it's like suddenly the room became interestingly constraining, whereas before I think it was generally the philosophy that the best experience was room to room and everything else was a substitute.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if we kind of dive into that journey a bit, so we had a lot of, basically, when I was at TDC, I sold some video-enabled meeting rooms to Novo Nordisk, and they were always, it was Cisco. Even before that, it was Tandberg, and a lot of rooms were being enabled, but it was still very much the room first and then remote participant second kind of.
Give us a feel for the size of the organization and the number of rooms, because it's quite a big organization, isn't it?
Yeah, so employee numbers were, give or take, 72,000-ish. Meeting rooms, about a tenth. So, we've probably got somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 meeting rooms, whereof half of those are then video enabled in some shape or form, and the rest are either empty rooms or have some form of, a screen and a drop cable. If you're really unfortunate, you might stumble across, a good old-fashioned speakerphone or something. That nobody knows how to use anymore, right?
I'm excited to get to your BYOD thoughts in a bit, but I will save that. But I mean, that is a sizable estate, and so pre Skype for Business, or even I guess during Skype for Business, that was standard space with Tandberg and then Cisco.
Yes. Obviously, some other bits and pieces have come in because, the need to standardize and kind of set some control and some governance on what was being purchased has obviously grown, along with the fact that all the meetings are now being Teams enabled. And there's this, we're accountable. So if somebody comes in and says, well, I was expecting this experience from a meeting room, but I got something completely different, then somebody needs to be able to make sure that the experience is similar, no matter which room you walk into, no matter where you are in the world, but also that it can be supported, that our support organization can actually take care of what might be going wrong in these rooms. So there is, we could say, bring your own device, put in whatever you want, but it would be impossible for us to then guarantee, a uniform user experience.
The business needs.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. So we got to COVID, Skype for Business. The business came back and wanted more from the room. So pick up from there. Yeah.
So everyone came back, and I guess so. At this point, we had roughly 1,500 maybe Cisco Room OS meeting rooms, but they were all joining what used to be Skype for Business, then became Teams meetings using Cisco's video interop. And that actually worked really well. But again, it was, a combination of, but I can do some things and I can't do all things, and I can't see people's reactions, and I can't see any raised hands, and someone's sharing PowerPoint, but it's just a blank screen. What's going on? And we could sense that, okay, there's definitely a need here to do something else. So it must have been at, I want to say ISE at was in Barcelona in must have been 22, or was it 21? I can't remember now. 22. It must have been 22. That we went looking for, what is going to be our MTR bundle.
Yeah.
And at that point, we were quite convinced it was going to be a Windows bundle because Windows seemed to be quite far ahead at that point. And, we're a big Microsoft house, and obviously it hurt to leave Cisco in that space, but it felt like that was the only option.
Yeah,
Cisco,
going back then, there wasn't a Cisco native option at that time.
There wasn't. So
I think that was happening in multiple places because the business was, as you say, demanding those extra tight integration features.
Yeah. And I mean, we did look at, okay, so instead of going the Teams Rooms route, should we kind of stay within the WebEx space? Can we see if we can adopt the WebEx client? Because the meeting experience on WebEx was superior to the Cisco endpoint joining a Teams meeting through CVI, simply because, of how the meeting is hosted in the cloud, how it's prioritized. The traffic from a Cisco endpoint wasn't prioritized higher than, anyone on their mobile connection or wherever they were. So you suddenly had this really high resolution camera sending a maybe not so good picture, and then it kind of became a bit of a situation where it didn't look good enough. So we figured, okay, if we go, we have to put all our eggs in one basket here, and it ended up being the Microsoft basket, and that was MTR Windows at that point. We chose what we felt was the most compatible bundle with what we were used to, how we were used to working. So we went with Logitech and Lenovo. So it was a Lenovo Core, and then the Logitech Rally Bar or Rally Bar Mini, depending on the room size. And the initial trials were excellent. We had remote management through Logitech Sync that we were used to in the control hub from Cisco. So there were lots of things there that were really good, but it all just happened too quickly. We moved too fast, considering it was still very early days. And Microsoft said, but we're transferring everything to the Teams Pro Management portal, so you should start using that straight away. And we did, but there were a bit too many, early blips.
Going back to 21, 22, it was still early days on the management story, the Windows story. Did you feel any pain with Windows that your team is not the desktop team, so therefore managing Windows kind of, in some organizations I've seen that kind of fall between the it's not end user compute and it's not AVUC?
Yeah, slightly. Luckily, the way that we're organized, because our department is digital workplace, the whole desktop area is also within the same department. So literally they're a couple of tables away. I know them very well. I can go and chat with them and say, the way that we're managing these devices, can we make sure that our policies are separate? Can we make sure that our, conditional access, compliance, everything is boxed in the way that it makes sense so that we don't accidentally affect each other? So we actually had that really well under control, but there were just still some things going on, Teams app updates that weren't coming through, Windows updates that were coming through at times where they perhaps shouldn't have been. Just weird experiences with the devices. I think what we saw the most was the resolution suddenly went all wonky on the touch panel. And then you couldn't join meetings. You couldn't do anything. You had to restart the device. Only way to do that was to pull the plug. Too many things that were making it a nuisance for our line of business, and making way too much work for our on-site support colleagues, obviously. Yeah. Conclusion was we did it a bit too quickly, and perhaps the product wasn't quite as mature as we thought. But then, we'd finally, I think we rolled out, it's going to sound kind of crazy, but we did actually get to roughly 1,000 rooms when then Cisco came out and said, "Oh, but we're gonna do a native Android MTR."
Yeah.
And we were like, "Okay, thanks." Let's
could have told us for 16 months
could
ago.
you have told us that a year ago? But I mean, obviously we knew that was a chance. But things were happening so quickly, and we needed to move on that kind of momentum of, teams.
Yeah.
So we just had to go for it when we did, and then Cisco came
and
out.
You've still got some MTRWs in flight now, so they're still about.
We've still got about 650.
It's a substantial estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, we're not implementing any new Windows MTR because everything is now Cisco is like the standard.
So Cisco came along. You're 1,000 MTRs in, and they're like, "Hey guys," because you got quite a good relationship with them as well. Obviously, you guys use them for other bits and pieces as well. So talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So obviously we had the history with Cisco. We're very big on Cisco networking. So when they came back and said, well, we're going to be introducing our own, MTR Android based version here, we think you should give it a try. And obviously we had a couple of devices to test, and instantly it looked to be a very good product. Obviously we had to go through our security team and say, hey, we want to introduce Android, and Android has kind of been something that you didn't mention. But we mentioned it, and they said, okay, but if we can set the correct level of compliance and conditional access from the accounts and everything else, then let's have a talk about it. So they ended up saying that was okay. We went through, did our first trials, so that must have been the beginning of 24. Yeah, we had we moved to a new campus. Everyone in IT was going to be gathered in the same building. Everyone in IT in Denmark, obviously. So we moved to a new campus, 130-ish meeting rooms, equipped them all with Cisco.
And what did you go with Cisco-wise? What kit or what combinations of kit?
So pretty much everything. We've got room bars in the smaller rooms, room bar pros in the medium, larger size rooms. We've got some EQs in spaces where there's more of a requirement for perhaps extra ceiling mics or extra cameras. Got quite a few desk pros as well, actually. Kind of presenter setup. Are you using the Desk Pros as single, like execs having an endpoint, or are you using them more as huddles? I see they seem to be moving into more of a huddle scenario now with the G2s. Yeah, that is exactly what they're saying. With the added camera, it's like bring in more people. But for us, it's very much been the product that we would give to execs to have as like a personal or even a home office device. And then we've also been using them as like a, 1 or 2 person huddle room type of device. But they haven't been popular. And I think, that is what they're then going to be solving with adding the extra camera. There's going to be more of an idea that you can, be more people gathered around. Yeah, I feel like the Desk Pro name is a bit of a misnomer now. Because like back in the day, if you had a Tandberg endpoint on your desk, you were a big deal, right? That was like a big thing, dedicated endpoint, and people had them at home as well. Whereas I think, again, part of this COVID impact was everybody used to driving a laptop, and they could share the current Excel they had open at the time or attach to PowerPoint, and suddenly the dedicated endpoint had a lesser, I still think there's some prestige there, but conversely, the huddle room thing, the idea of dropping an all-in-one in and off you go is quite nice. It is, and I think, that's what we're seeing, Microsoft going kind of this express install route, a lot of OEMs coming in on that space. I think there might be something there, the fact that you can have an all-in-one, drop it in, maybe not even have to attach it to a wall or anything else. That could probably be an advantage. But again, it depends on kind of the feeling that the user gets sitting in front of the device. If they think it looks too complicated, then they're not going to use it. And I've kind of got the impression that that's how our users feel about the Desk Pro. It looks a bit too flashy, whereas everything else, it's just a screen on a wall. Yeah, there's a touch panel, and it can be intimidating, but not as intimidating.
That's
interesting. I think there's a kind of a very fine border there between what do we as end users feel comfortable with and what don't we feel comfortable with. I think the Desk Pro is in a bit of a tricky spot there.
Interesting. So you guys have got, now you've kind of revealed the full estate story. So you've got, how many Cisco MTRs are you up to now?
We are almost at 2,500, just below. And then we've got, so still about 600-ish Room OS enabled Cisco endpoints, and roughly the same with the MTR Windows bundle.
Are you using the Cisco CVI for the Room OS to get to the Teams meetings?
Yeah, still. And I mean, again, that's what makes this complicated. We're not just going to rip down perfectly good equipment because we've decided to go in a different direction, right? So it still has to stay on the wall until it goes end of life, from a sustainability perspective. And that just means that we have to then find a way to make it clear that you might be in one room and then step out, walk down the hall 5 meters into a new room, and it's a completely different kind of look and feel. It's a different solution. But the goal is to end up in a Teams meeting. Or, if you've been invited by an external, it could be a WebEx or a Zoom or whatever. But let's say Teams is our corporate standard. So that's obviously what we're trying to enable as if you can get into the meeting, then it's a good start. So we've done a lot of work with kind of adoption and we've got the real estate. You walk into a room, you can put instructions right there on the screen. We've always been very much against the whole laminated piece of paper that sits on the table that can either get lost or get outdated or whatever can happen to instructions on paper. So we've very much been, appreciated the fact that we could change what was on that background image. And signage, I think, is a completely different story, because signage inside a meeting room for me is a bit overkill. Makes more sense in the coffee areas, the kitchens, that kind of thing. Inside the meeting room, I want people to be able to join their meetings and not have any problem with that. So that's what we've kind of worked on is making sure that when you enter the room, it's on the screen. You've got two options, either click a button or use your PC in some shape or form, right? So I think that's fortunately it seems to have worked really well.
Nice. And what does your team look like? Do you sub out any of the support? Because that's a big global estate.
Yeah, so we've got an external partner handling all first level support, and then we've got regional IT managers who handle local IT support, where you've typically got at least a handful of people who have some AV knowledge and feel confident working on the equipment inside a meeting room. Fortunately, it's almost always enough to restart, and then everything comes back online and works as it should. If it isn't, then they go on and create a ticket that hits a global AV support queue, where we've got some really good people who know what they're doing in Control Hub, in all the Microsoft platforms. And if they don't know what to do either, then typically it ends up with me, and then I either can work it out or can ask the correct people at, either Cisco or Microsoft or Logitech or wherever it may be, and then we get there in the end. So it's quite comprehensive, but it works very well, I would say.
And you're using a mix of presumably Pro Portal and, well, I guess now the Android stuff is coming into Pro Portal. We've got public dates for that. That'll be nice for you because it'll be centralized. Yes. And then the OEM tooling as well, I guess, from Cisco and Logi.
Yeah, exactly. So especially because we did kind of adopt the Pro Management Portal early on. It's meant that we've kind of been used to it. There are still some things there that I'm not so fond of. The amount of incidents being created is one. I know I can, scale them down so that I don't have to see everything constantly if I don't think it's important, but there is a lot. And I feel like because of those early days issues we had, sometimes we kind of don't know if we can trust the signals that are coming from the Pro Management Portal. It might be saying that something's wrong with the front of room display inside a room, but in reality, there's nothing wrong. It just went into standby when, the device was expecting something else. And again, from kind of a support perspective, is that incident worthy, or is that just something that, you have to live with and then accept the fact that the room actually works?
Yeah, is it a transient issue and then they're going to hit the panel and the display will come on, but the HDCP is saying it feels like it's gone?
Exactly. So we were very much in that, how proactive do we want to be based on these signals that we're getting? And I mean, it's ended up being a question of, fortunately with the Cisco, with the MTR Android bundle, I kind of feel like the split is, if it's a hardware related issue or configuration of the hardware, I'll always look to the WebEx Control Hub. If it's something with the Teams client, sign in perhaps, or something along those lines, then I would look still currently Teams Admin Center, because for the Android devices, of course, but that will be the Pro Management Portal, and I think that's fine. And I don't mind having to look multiple places. But there's still that feeling of, okay, if everything was centralized, maybe the data I would be getting access to would be even more, specific and correct with regards to room usage, utilization, that kind of thing as well. So there's always room for improvement in some of the portals, but I feel like,
the team tend to listen into these, so they'll be hearing the feedback, Christopher. It's good to hear. Awesome. And then talk me through you huge estate again. What's the BYOD experiences you had?
So right now, we've always kind of considered the D in BYOD as disaster. And that's obviously a very harsh way to put it, but it's because...
I really enjoyed that. It's the first time I've heard that. I'm definitely going to reuse it.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes from the fact that if you have unmanaged devices, then you lose that transparency on what's going on. So our thought was, if we were going to introduce BYOD at some point, it would preferably still be on a managed solution. So, I mean, if we took the Cisco product that's relevant in that area, for example,
because they brought out last ISE their BYOD bar, which again was like traditionally would have been unheard of, but now exists.
Exactly. But obviously they adapt and can see that there is definitely a space here. I mean, it brings some advantages, because if you've got multiple meeting platforms, or you've got a mixed environment where, I mean, Novo Nordisk is very complicated in the sense that we deal with a lot of sub-entities. We've got Novo Nordisk Engineering, we've got people who have Novo Nordisk credentials, but don't use them as their main kind of work login. So if they're in a shared environment with Novo Nordisk colleagues, well, then they can't book the same rooms, they don't have access to see the same exchange information. It becomes tricky. There are some scenarios there where, putting in a device that you could just plug into your computer would definitely make sense. As long as I can see that device, I can manage it, I know that it's updated, I know that it's secure, then, I think there could still be some investigation to be done in that space. Especially because, again, we've only video enabled half of our meeting rooms. We've still got roughly 4,000 that don't have anything at the moment. And when we do surveys, we hear our colleagues saying, we don't have enough rooms. That's always going to be the story, right? There aren't enough rooms. So if we could make 4 smaller BYOD rooms instead of 1 medium Teams room, then maybe that's a good way to spend your money. So that's definitely a kind of
it's interesting, the whole
considering.
TCO story, isn't it? Like the manageability versus the business impact of it not working versus life cycle and supportability. There's quite a few variables there.
Exactly. I think, from our perspective, because we don't own the budget, we do a chargeback model, which is going to change very soon. But we kind of do a model right now where we pay for licenses, service fees, and then we charge line of business back. But we don't currently own the budget to purchase the hardware. So again, from a lifecycle management perspective, it's very, very tricky to go in and say, right, we need to replace these devices within the next 5 years. We need to start getting the money in now so that we can spend it later on. We don't have that option. So right now, we just have to say a year, 2 years in advance, you've got to know that that device you've got on the wall is going to go end of life. It will be completely unsupported. It won't even work anymore.
It won't even work anymore is the really key thing, because it's not the best anymore and it won't be supported. I find certainly in conversations I've been in, the business can push back on, we'll roll the dice for 6 months, which turns into a year, which turns into 2 years. But I think with the security stuff in the cloud, one of the blessings is Microsoft and the other vendors and their clouds taking a more hard line on that, because it is insecure, and that is it's a real technical business risk. It's not just about supportability. It's about, it could be a security vulnerability. Absolutely.
And we're seeing it right now. Cisco announced that the older touch panel, the Touch 10 as they call it, was going to be end of life. And obviously we've let our users know, and again, we've told them, but there are still some that are slow to have them replaced. We are very close to having them all replaced now, but it's been a very long process, and it does require that you kind of say, but if you don't replace them, then, in the end, it could mean they either won't work or we'll have to disable them. But people don't mind waiting, for as long as they can. So, it's a tricky one, but if you've got the silver bullet for that one, I'd love to hear.
Anybody listening to the pod that's in the same situation, I'll have to get you to one of the customer roundtables we do, Christopher, because that is a common conversation.
Yeah,
it's 2026. We've got the whole way through the pod without saying AI once, and now I'm going to spoil it. But I'm interested from your point of view, how much has the AI conversation got into the room and collab planning conversation?
Quite a lot, I would say. And in the rooms, we don't really refer to it as AI. We all know that it is, but I'd say both Microsoft and Cisco are actually very diligent in that space to not call it AI all the time. With Cisco, it's more of our cameras are starting to have intelligence. They are starting to be able to frame, the picture in the best possible way, based on what they think is the best possible way, of course. From Microsoft, we've been big users of Copilot for a long time. So now bringing Facilitator into the meeting room is going to be kind of one of the interesting aspects, where I think it's an amazing opportunity to be able to have an assistant that can do your note taking and hand out tasks after a meeting, as long as they're correct, of course, and I don't get too much extra work. But it's more from if you're an end user who doesn't have a lot of IT knowledge, I think it can be very intimidating that suddenly there's something extra joining that meeting. And I really appreciated seeing the news the other day that, third-party agents are going to be identified as they are joining Teams meetings, and you're going to be able to say, no, thank you. because I think that's certainly becoming an area now where people don't know what they're admitting into a meeting.
Yeah. And again, pharmaceutical, there's a lot of things in those meetings that are sensitive. You don't want some random bot taking the meeting and the metadata.
Exactly. So we prefer to keep it on our own terms, of course. But I think facilitator, if it does evolve to a point where, you can talk to it during the meeting, ask it to create a task or take a specific note on something, I think that would be amazing. It's such a cool tool to have, along with the speaker recognition and everything else that's kind of really close to being there in a very, good and secure way.
Yeah.
No one wanted to opt in to the old, in our organization and not even in our department, lots of people didn't want to opt in to face and voice enrollment. They thought it was, completely overstepping their boundaries.
Yeah, very, if I may generalize, like a general Europe philosophy on that stuff is quite cautious, I think.
Yes. And don't want to call it a tinfoil hat or something, but it is kind of that, this is too much. I'm giving up too much of my personal sensitive information here by enrolling face and voice. I think the way Microsoft have proposed that they're going to do it instead makes a lot of sense, because having all these extra tools, it's just going to make our lives easier. It's just going to make us more efficient, is the hope, right? So I think it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, you see a personal upside. I like that's a good point on not calling it AI, but talking about the feature, it's AI, who cares? But actually facilitator is this agent experience that can help you in the meeting and take your minutes. And I think you're right. When it gets to the level of it's got to at some point be a voice mode, and then it's engaging, the option to engage with it and correct it and use that brain in the room to do new things is quite exciting, I think.
Exactly. And I think there's going to be a generational gap there where you've got people who are used to talking to Siri or to Alexa who will find it very natural. And then you've probably got some people who would say, there's no way I'm talking to a meeting room. That's just completely unheard of, right? And I think we'll see a big split there. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see how it gets adopted.
Awesome. Yeah. Chris, any amazing journey story? Thanks for giving us so much insight. Anything you want to share with the community in terms of your combined experience on that journey?
I don't know. I don't want to sit here and say that I think everyone should hop on Cisco's train, but I feel like they have been a very, very valuable partner in this and done a very good job. I think this is just such an exciting space that's evolving so quickly. I was completely caught off guard when coming back to ISE this year to see that Neat had reintroduced, I want to say, because I thought it was gone, but the center of table speaker, or not speaker, sorry, video where I thought, absolutely hadn't seen that kind of making a comeback. Because we tested it out with Logitech's site a couple of years ago, and I was, even though I kind of liked the idea, I didn't appreciate the fact that it gives you the impression that you're talking to the person who's remote just because the camera's between you and the person on the other side of the table. So it can trick the remote participant into thinking, oh yeah, I'm at eye level and I'm included, but actually you're not speaking to me even though you're looking at me. And that's where that whole shifting where you're looking has always actually had quite a good effect, because you know who's being addressed. And so Cisco's alternative approach is to put cameras on the walls,
outside in.
Right? The outside in perspective where you're looking over the shoulder of who's speaking. And I think I like that way of doing it better, but we'll see. Again, that is also a lot of added hardware into a meeting room, adds complexity, adds cost. So we'll see. I don't know who's going to come out on top of the extra cameras in the room discussion, but I think it's cool.
As you say, ISE, it was buzzing this year, particularly in Hall 2, where most of the the UC vendors are. And it's competitive, it's innovative. Like Logi now have the outside in because they did the site first, and now a lot of vendors brought out multicam this year or showed multicam for the first time. So that plus the AI, it's an interesting times, as you say.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I can't even imagine now what's going to be kind of the next big thing at next year's ISE. You know, are we getting to a point now where you can't put any more technology into the meeting rooms? We're just going to have to slow down a bit and let people adopt for a while. Because I mean, we've been. Again, I want to say we've been quite quick with our adoption of a lot of technology. I didn't even get through the whole telepresence, the IX5000 systems that we had a lot of, and they were replaced by an immersive MTR experience consisting of a 21:9 screen, banana-shaped table, front row, active, and people have been blown away by how good they feel those rooms are.
And that's amazing, because the cost, I did some of those when I was at a Cisco partner, I did some of that telepresence stuff, like as one of many people, and it was $250,000 at each end, like it was an amazing experience. But now what we can do with MTR for a fraction of that budget is pretty impressive.
Exactly, and I feel like. I'm still waiting for MTR Android to properly support the 21:9 format. So again, if anyone's listening who can give me an update on...
So Cisco showed that at the ISE before last, but it wasn't there. That's a good question. I need to follow up on that.
It's a bit of a funny one. Obviously, it's not hugely important at the moment. And it's not like we have a lot of them. But there's still some unexplored space there for kind of creating these innovative, different rooms that people actually, are impressed by. And I think that's part of having fun at work, right? Is trying to do something that isn't just a standard basic meeting room, but actually give something extra. I feel like we have the building blocks to do that now, which is really cool.
Awesome. Well, Christopher, thanks so much for sharing the journey. Really appreciate it. And the pace you guys have gone with the rollout on the number of rooms, we're going to have to put something in the diary for maybe this time next year to see what that innovative thing is you brought to the business.
That would be cool. I mean, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. And I mean, if there are any questions that come in to our journey, I would be happy to answer them. So just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Christopher. See you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.